Hi, it's Mr. Benson here. I'm just making a short video on rearranging non-linear equations because this is a skill that pops up in topics like ratio, and it's not something that we've really talked about when we were talking about solving linear equations. It's actually something that's popped up before ratio as well. Now, what do we mean by this? Now, linear equations, hopefully you're familiar with them by now. These are equations where we have x to the power of 1. So the x is on the top line of the equation, it's in the numerator, and it's not x squared or anything weird like this. Now, and that's fine because a lot of equations are linear equations, but we'll often come across situations like this one below where we might have something like 5 equals 3 over x. And we come across this kind of thing when we're solving ratios or doing trigonometry is another example, where we might have sine of an angle as the opposite over the hypotenuse. Sometimes we want to be able to rearrange it to get the hypotenuse by itself. So this is it's actually a similar skill to what we've done in linear equations, but it's just thinking about it in a slightly different way. So there's a couple of possibilities here. Now, which one you do depends a little bit on the question that you get, but I'll show you both of them as we work through these. So, all you need to think about is that if we want to move part of an equation, so if we want to move this x off the denominator on this side of the equation, what we need to do is think about what this x is doing. Now, basically what we're saying here is that it's 3 divided by x. Now, the opposite operation to dividing by x would be to multiply both sides by x. So we'll do that and see what happens. So I multiply my left-hand side and my right-hand side by x. So we know from what we've done with linear equations that when we do the opposite operation, or the inverse operation I should say, we cancel the object that we were, the term that we were trying to get rid of. So then what have we got left? Well, 5 times x is 5x, and now on the right hand side all we have is 3. So you can see now we've gone from a non-linear equation, because when x is on the bottom line it's to the power of -1, which is not linear. So now we've gone to a linear equation, and this is something that you'd all know how to solve. So we would divide both sides by 5, cancel our 5's, terrible, and what we're going to end up with there is x equals 3 over 5. Now the same thing would apply to this example down here with the sine of x. If we want to get the h off this side of the equation, we would multiply both sides by h. These would cancel here, and we'd be left with h sine x equals O. So if we wanted to get the value of, sorry, my cursor's gone a bit weird, that would give us the value of O. If we wanted to get the value of h by itself, which we might do at some time, then we've got to do the opposite operation of multiplying h by sine x, which would be to divide both sides by sine x, and so it would be O over sine x. Now, the other way of thinking about this, without thinking about it in terms of multiplying both sides by something and then cancelling, is just to remember that when something goes on to the opposite side of the equation, it changes from either a positive number to a negative number if we're adding or subtracting, or it changes from the bottom line of the equation to the top line of the equation. So it changes from dividing by h on this side to multiplying by h on that side. So the sign or the operation becomes the inverse when we go from one side of the equation to the other. As you get a bit more familiar with this process, you'll probably start to think in those terms, and you'll stop thinking about these steps that I've described up here. Now moving on, let's do a couple of other examples. I'll just do this one the usual way. So we're dividing by y on this side. The opposite of that would be to multiply by y. So I get 5y on the left hand side of my equal sign. These y's cancel, so I get 5y equals 10. Then to get y by itself, I divide everything by 5. These cancel on the left hand side, so I get y equals 2. I'll show you another way of doing this, and this is actually a particularly good thing to do if things are written as fractions, because it can make things a little bit shorter for you. The other thing to remember as well is that any whole number can be written as a fraction over 1. Now, what you can do is that if 4 over 1 equals 3 over z, you can actually just inverse both your equations. And what I mean by that is we just flip them up the other way. So if 4 over 1 equals 3 over z, then 1 over 4 must equal z over 3. And then we've now got our z on the top line, so we now have a linear equation, and if we want to get z by itself, well, we know that we would then multiply everything by 3. The 3's would cancel and we would get z equals 3/4. So inversing is another thing you can do, but if you inverse, you must make sure that you inverse everything, so both sides. Now, okay, hopefully that helps with rearranging the equations that you'll be coming across in ratios.